Okay, so welcome to this video on selecting your match day 4 round of 16 team. And as a reminder, our budget has increased to 105 million euros, so we can really go for some of those more premium assets. And also, we've got unlimited transfers until the deadline. So we need to make the most of this and really have a look at what's best for our teams. And what is best for your team is probably going to depend around the structure of the draw and whether you've still got your wild card available or not. Because that could impact the teams that you go for and how much you really load up on those teams. So, to start off with, let's talk about the simple scenario. If you've still got that wild card available, I imagine your plan is to play it in the quarterfinals, which means you can select obviously all of the best teams who are playing some of the lesser nations to try and really maximize those point opportunities. I think that is all fairly self-explanatory. You might find yourself in a situation though where actually a lot of your team will progress, and actually you might not actually need to play that wild card in the quarterfinal, and you could play it in the semi-final, which could be more beneficial in case there are any shocks in the quarters, and then you're really going to be laughing going into those last set of fixtures. So the other option we need to discuss is if you've not got that wild card left, we've gone for the aggressive strategy probably of playing the wild card limitless in the group stage. And this is where things can get a little bit more tricky, but definitely manageable. So I think one of the things we've got to be careful about is the structure of the draw. So we don't want to have too many teams on the same side as the draw as each other, because we want to try and limit the amount of opportunities where players could get knocked out, and particularly players getting knocked out by playing each other, because that is going to be a problem. If you've engineered your team where half of your team is actually going to get knocked out by the quarterfinals, well, you're only going to have 3 or 4 free transfers, depending on what round they're in, to fix that problem. So you kind of need to set your team up to avoid getting into that certain situation. So let's talk about an extreme scenario. So in this round of 16, we see Spain versus Georgia. A lot of us are going to want lots of Spanish players in our teams because that is one of the more favourable fixtures. But let's say we load up with 3 or 4 players from Spain. And then also, let's say we really fancy Germany to beat Denmark, which in reality, I do believe that will be a tricky fixture for Germany. But let's say we loaded up on Germany and then we have 3 or 4 players from Germany too. In the quarterfinals, there's going to be 2 issues. So you're going to have 3 or 4 of your players instantly knocked out because they are playing each other. And also, you will lower the amount of points that you can get, because you'll essentially be lowering your ceiling in that match, because you're going to have like German attackers playing against Spanish defenders and vice versa. So the overall amount of points that you can get will actually be lessened. So we kind of need to manage where these teams are going to meet and where we with ones that we put into our teams. So I've kind of listed off here. I mean, the wildcard teams you've still got available are fairly obvious. You're going to back Spain, Portugal, England, Netherlands, maybe the odd German player too, because we know that sort of someone like Musiala, Gundogan, they've been really good this tournament. I am actually seeing rumours just while we're on here, just before I started recording, was that Fulkrug might be in line to start instead of Vert. So that could be something to keep an eye on and maybe avoid Verts, because it sounds a little bit of a risk to take. And then if you've got no wild card left, this is where I think you kind of need to spread your options around a little bit. So I've kind of played it down to 2 or 3 Spain, 2 or 3 Portugal. I do actually think you could go for 4 England players, because we know that England are on the favourable side of the draw, and England are actually now, because of their good defence so far in the tournament, and because the way that the draw has fallen, are actually now the favourites to win the tournament, which does seem a bit crazy when they only got 5 points from the group stage, and they have been quite underwhelming. And then you can probably pick a few players from sort of Netherlands, Austria and Germany. This will give you sort of a nice balance between players on either side of the draw. And finally, just as a reminder there, I've put down at the bottom how many transfers we have got for free in each stage of the tournament. So we've got 3 free transfers at the quarterfinals, 4 at the semi and 5 before the final. This is not that many. So if we plan our teams so that teams are going to play each other and knock each other out, it's going to get tricky to not take hits in our teams. So with all that being said, I have created 2 teams based on these scenarios, and I've also put in some possible swaps that we will discuss as we go through. So this is my current team for if you've got a wild card still to play. This is actually my current draft at the moment, because I've still got my wild card to play. So let's just run through some of the key picks and why I've gone with them. So In goal, we've gone with Pickford and Costa. So Pickford is there because England have been one of the best defensive teams in the tournament so far, and doubling up on that England defence, maybe even tripling up for some people, is going to be an option. So we've got Pickford and then Gahey when we get to it there. And then the other goalkeeper that I've selected here is Diogo Costa. Now, the original pick that I went for, so don't make this mistake, was I went for Unai Simon, but Unai Simon plays on the same day as Jordan Pickford. They're going to be two highly popular keepers. Don't make the mistake of picking both of those keepers, because you're not going to be able to sub one in, etc., because they play on the same day for obvious reasons. So I've gone with Diogo Costa. Portugal are one of the teams, according to the bookmakers, most likely to keep a clean sheet. In fact, when we get onto the defence, all of this defence is built around the teams that, according to the bookmakers, are most likely to get clean sheets in match day 4. So moving on to Gahey, he has been one of the best ball recoverers in the entire tournament so far. So that is why he is in this team rather than anyone else. And at 4.5 million, he is really cheap. And speaking of 4.5 million defenders, the other one that I have gone for is Cucurella of Spain. He got a huge amount of ball recoveries in that game against Italy. I think it was like 14 or something. Not so many in the first game, but there is some promising signs there that there could be some chances for some ball recoveries. And he's cheap, and he's probably one of the teams most likely to keep a clean sheet. So that is why he's in there alongside with Carvajal, who has been fantastic from an attacking point of view so far this tournament. Probably not going to continue, but I've put him in there just in case. And then keeping with the theme of attacking sort of fullbacks, we have gone with João Cancelo. Again, Portugal, one of the teams most likely to keep a clean sheet. We know João Cancelo is a player who likes to get forward and will get forward and move into those midfield positions to sort of push Portugal up the pitch. So he could be in position to get assists or take shots from distance. And then finally, we have gone for Virgil van Dijk with a favourable fixture playing against Romania. Virgil van Dijk is a player that we know will be decent for ball recoveries, and there is still a small chance that he's on the penalties. There were some rumours before the tournament that he would be on the penalties. So fingers crossed that is something that is in the pipeline, and we could really take advantage of that if he is. We can afford to go for players like Van Dijk now because we've got that extra sort of budget of the 105 million. So I feel like this is a team that is quite stacked on defence. Obviously, I expect things to get a little bit more cagey as we get into the knockout stage of the tournament, which may well benefit the defenders. Okay, so on to those midfield slots where we have gone with double German midfielders. Now, this is a tricky fixture, I do believe, against Denmark, but I've picked these players based on the form that they have shown so far this tournament, which I think can be just as important as picking the easy fixtures. So Gundogan is also going to be on the penalties, we do expect, and Musiala has also been in fantastic form too. So they do warrant a place in this team, I believe, even though it is a slightly trickier game. Moving on, we've gone with Nico Williams, who plays Georgia. He was fantastic in the game against Italy, some great underlying data too, but unlucky to really not get any attacking returns in that match. So I am backing him sort of coming into this Georgia game to get some attacking returns based on how he's done so far in the tournament. We've got Bruno Fernandes, who I don't think needs much talking about. We know he's a kind of an all-round player. Will get ball recovery, shots outside the box, assists, chipping with goals. I am happy with Bruno Fernandes that he doesn't need much explaining. Now, one player in this team that might get switched, this is my current draft too, is Xavi Simons. He's getting subbed quite early in games, which is worrying me, but I do like that fixture against Romania. An option that I could look to do is maybe bring in someone like Pedri to load up on a fourth Spanish player, because it does feel like I could be potentially a little bit light on Spanish players in that fixture against Georgia. I do actually like Pedri because I think he's actually the most advanced of the midfield three. I think you're seeing a lot of people going for Ruiz, but I do actually prefer Pedri. On the heat maps, he's looking more advanced, and there's some really good underlying data in the last game too. So for that reason, I would actually be on Pedri, and that is a swap that I may well decide to do. And then finally, going into that forward line where we have gone with Cristiano Ronaldo. Surely he's got to score at some point in this tournament. He's had loads of chances. He'll be desperate to score. Slovenia is a good fixture for Cristiano Ronaldo. Gone with Mbappe in there. This sort of just to cover this sort of the high ownership. He's going to be still probably the most highest owned player in the game, or one of, going into this round of 16. I kind of feel like I need to cover that off, even though Belgium are a tricky fixture, but it is the penalties. And he is also killing Mbappe. So that is why he gets a place in this team. But if you didn't like that, you could swap it to someone like a Harry Kane or even a Morata too. And then finally, the last striker that I've gone with, the last forward, is Cody Gakpo, who I think actually looks really good this tournament. He's passed the eye test. He scored 2 goals. I've gone with him based on over Depay because he scored 2 goals and rather Depay's 1. But I do honestly believe it's probably a 50-50 flip. between those two if you're looking for a Netherlands forward, but I've gone with Gakpo just because he's in a little bit more form. The other options that I haven't discussed is Morata, who is still a fantastic pick also. So next up is the team if you've got no wild card left to play. So I will rush through this a little bit more because I might have already talked about some of these players in more detail in the previous video. So I've explained already why I have gone with Jordan Pickford and Diogo Costa, as well as Guehi too. Now, this is where it gets a little bit different in defence in this team. I've gone with Mueni of Austria to sort of give you that balance across the draw. Austria do play Turkey, which is a good fixture, so he's trying to load up on teams a bit on the right hand side of the draw. The issue you kind of got with this whole thing of picking teams on the left or the right hand side of the draw is sort of that left hand side of the draw with Spain, Portugal, France, etc. They've all got reasonably good fixtures in the first game, and then it's the second game where things are going to get tricky. The right hand side of the draw is a lot of lesser nations where it's kind of hard to call who is going to sort of progress at times. But I do feel like Austria have been fantastic this tournament, so that is why Mueni is in there against Turkey to just give a bit of balance across the draw. And he's been decent for the ball recovery so far too. Cucurella I have discussed as mentioned, as same as João Cancelo. And then finally, the last defender as well, who I've discussed, is Van Dijk. So you'll see there is still a lot of similarities between the two teams. You just kind of can't go all in on his teams as much, just in case there is any shocks, or you're going to have teams playing against each other. And then moving on to that midfield, we've got Gundogan, who I mentioned is on the penalties. Ignore the fact that the captain's armbands are currently on Nico Williams in this screenshot. I've got all my captains listed there. And now all my captains by each day are actually the same for each team. So you can see how strongly I feel about some of these players being in our teams, because I've made sure they are in both versions of this team, because they're the captains that I want on each of those days. Now, I've gone with Jude Bellingham in here because I do feel like you need to sort of go with that quadruple England in this draft, just because it's very likely, based on how the draw is planned out, that England could go deep into the tournament and they are the favourites. Not overly enthused with Jude Bellingham, particularly after his performance last time out, but he has scored already this tournament, so that's why I've gone with him. But you could easily, if you wanted to save some money, put some funds somewhere else, you could easily downgrade Bellingham to Saka, or unless Saka randomly plays at left back, which is being discussed, so maybe go for Foden instead. Declan Rice has actually been very good for the ball recoveries. If you really need to save money, it wouldn't actually be the worst play in the world to go for Declan Rice. But I've gone with Bellingham based on the fact that he has scored so far. Nico Williams, I've already discussed, same with Bruno Fernandes. And Sabitzer is the penalty taker for Austria. I mentioned about getting a bit of balance across the draw. So I have gone with Sabitzer. Pretty much because he's on the penalties again. I think that's a 50-50 split between him or Baumgartner. Baumgartner's probably slightly more attacking, but Sabitzer's the penalty. So again, that is the 50-50 coin flip. I slightly prefer Sabitzer because I just love a player that is on the penalty kicks. And then finally, moving into that forward line, we've gone with Harry Kane because I said about wanting that quadruple up on the England players because of how deep I believe that they can go in this tournament. And he's also on the penalties too, which is handy. Again, we've gone with Gakpo, but you could swap that to a Morata or someone else if there's someone you more preferred. That is a kind of a slot that's kind of there for your preference really in this team. There's many options that you could go for in around that mid-price forward position. And then finally, again, Mbappe, because I just really want to cover off that captaincy pick on that day, because I do believe he will be the most captained, and as I mentioned, he is Kylian Mbappe after all. So those are the two teams that I would be looking to go for with the information that we currently have. I'm sure by the time we get close to the deadline, I might have tweaked things a little bit with the information that we have. So follow me on the socials where I'll be posting more regular updates to my teams. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Drop a like if you did, that would be really appreciated. If you really enjoyed it, drop a subscribe too, and I will also be back with FPL content too in the new season if that is your thing. So thank you very much, everyone, and I'll see you soon.